Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This was going to be the beginning of a Ukraine news update, second part thereof, but actually it's going to take a little bit longer because I'm going to do some debunking of some claims concerning the big event that took place this morning, which was the downing of a Russian Il-76 cargo aircraft. Now, the Russians claimed that this aircraft was carrying POWs, that there were several various claims, 60 POWs, 3 crew, or 60 POWs, 3 crew and 6 people with those POWs, which itself is somewhat dubious. We'll look at that in a second. Here is the footage of the plane. Now, it's worth noting that it definitely looks like it's been hit. I mean, things are falling off it. Then there is a massive explosion. As you can see there, that is a huge explosion. Something is making that happen. That I don't think is explained by just fuel on board. So it looks unlikely that this was carrying POWs, or if it was carrying POWs, it was carrying a cargo and POWs. But it doesn't get particularly comfortable for the Russians with their claim, because none of the evidence points towards it being what the Russians claim, which is, I believe, landing at Belgorod to swap prisoners. So the Russian MOD confirms the crash. They claim that the plane was carrying Ukrainian prisoners, while several Ukrainian media outlets have claimed, citing military sources, that the plane was carrying S-300 missiles. I'll actually adapt that slightly to carrying Iranian missiles, more probably, but we'll get to that later. Ukrainska Pravda initially reported the plane was down by Ukrainian forces, but then the information was later retracted as another force did not confirm it. So Spilner said, citing Ukraine's defense ministry, that they could not confirm whether the plane was hit by Ukrainian forces. And that's probably because people are wondering, oh, let's not admit this yet, because then it might be carrying POWs. But I think it's practically impossible for it to have been carrying POWs, and we'll go into that now. So, you've got the big news saying that 63 people died is what the initial claim was. So if it has 60 prisoners on board, then if that's a correct claim, then there are 3 people looking after 60 prisoners whilst also flying the airplane. You're thinking, really? I mean, that's a plane that can be hijacked pretty damned easily. Then 65 prisoners of war were claimed. 3 accompanying persons were on board. And then there is another claim that actually there were 6 people looking after, and I don't know whether this is kind of responding to, or that doesn't seem very plausible. And then there's another 6 people that were looking after those POWs, but even that seems, somewhat unlikely. Russia says a second plane with 80 Ukrainian POWs on board was turned back after the first one was shot down. Chairman of the State Duma Defense Committee Kartopolov said that the plane was hit by 3 Patriot or Iris-T missiles, and he added that the prison exchange is postponed. So the only bit of information, the only bit of data that supports that this plane was carrying POWs is the circumstantial evidence that it was shot down on the same day that there was genuinely due to be a prisoner exchange, right? All the other evidence goes against that theory. So you've got one bit of circumstantial evidence and the fact that the Russians have claimed it. Right, okay. So as War Translated says, Dmitry, the Russian theory that the plane was carrying 60 plus Ukrainian POWs makes zero sense. 60 POWs, 6 crew members, and 3 additional staff. So actually, the claim, the slightly refined claim is 6 crew and 3 additional staff. So you've got 3 soldiers, I would presume, are looking after 60 POWs, is who they're saying was on board. What would stop POWs from hijacking the plane and flying straight into Ukrainian territory, which is less than 100 miles away? Surely the Ukrainian side would admit if there were Ukrainian POWs on the plane. I'm not sure that's certainly true, but it does seem like the numbers don't add up in terms of who was on the plane. Right, Ilya Ponomarenko adds to this. So far, I find it doubtful that the downed Russian aircraft was transporting 65 Ukrainian POWs for a prisoner swap conveyed by just 3 Russians. It's also not highly probable that Ukraine's military had no idea that the certain Il-76 was carrying POWs, especially now that the Russians even claim there's suddenly another POW aircraft as well. You know, prisoner swaps between Russia and Ukraine are complex and highly sensitive operations in which every breath is reconciled between the two sides for weeks, if not months. I find it doubtful that such a major swap involving more than one aircraft full of Ukrainian POWs, and the Ukrainian military had no idea about this massive air transfer to Belgorod. Possible, but not likely. Lastly, if I understand the situation right, the Il-76 was down shortly after takeoff near the town of Jablonovo, northeast of Belgorod. So it was supposedly leaving Belgorod and not arriving. I'm not sure about this. Was it really a major prisoner swap? Let's wait and see what really happened. But any word coming out of the Russian military's mouth deserves zero trust. Okay, let's look at some of the other claims concerning this. So the Russian Il-76, which crashed, had an interesting flight path. It started the day in Iran, having flown from Moscow the day before. So, okay, this is definitely not looking like a prison swap plane. It's come from Moscow to Iran the day before, and in Iran, it's stopped over the night. It's picked something up, one would assume, and is coming back to Belgorod and possibly taking off from Belgorod then again to go somewhere else. Now, this is then blown up in the skies. An explosion makes it look like there were some really significant munitions on board. So I would suggest it might have had Iranian ballistic missiles or something on board. I doubt, says Tim White, Ukrainian POWs were picked up in Tehran. The plane then flew over Saudi Arabia, Israel and Egypt before returning home. Now, as ever with Russian planes, you have issues of transponders not being turned on. So you see it going over the sea here by, is that the Gulf of Oman, by Iran, and then into Saudi Arabia, and then being picked up again near the Mediterranean as it flies north before getting to Belgorod. So again, it's practically impossible that as carrying Ukrainian POWs. What's currently known about the Il-76 crash? So Anton Gerashchenko says the geolocation of the plane where the Il-76 was shot down, this place is on Google Map, indicates that it was flying from Belgorod, not towards it. Locals confirmed that it flew from Belgorod. The quote from a local Telegram channel, My Belgorod, says the plane was leaving Belgorod, not flying to Belgorod. It was seen over Belgorod by Pepl readers and was already reported smoking at the time. The direction of the crash also indicates that the plane left Belgorod and was moving away from it. There are no fragments of bodies or the whole airplane construction on the photo from the crash site, but the explosion in the video looks very much like a detonation, and a massive one. During the crash, several large objects fell out of the airplane or were dropped. Now the Ministry of Emergency Situations is being kicked out of the crash site, and only structures of the Russian MOD remain. That is, all civilians have been removed. A Russian Telegram channel reported that there was an order to curtail the work of civilian services at the crash site of the Il-76 in Belgorod region. How suspicious. The Ministry of Emergency Situations operational headquarters stopped its work. Only Defense Ministry structures and the power block remain on the site. The Ukrainian Coordination Headquarters on Prisoners of War has issued a statement regarding the crash. The coordination headquarters and other profile structures are gathering all the necessary information until official statements are made public or entitled people or structures make comments, and media and citizens are called to refrain from sharing unverified information. He says sharing unverified information. The Ukrainians are obviously going to be looking at this going, right, okay, well, have we made a mistake? Was this a POW plane? So they're going to, I think initially it's like, yeah, we shot this down. Oh, no, not sure yet. But I think it's practically impossible, as I say, for this to be a POW carrying plane. Some geolocation. So interestingly, the plane falls in a direction from west to east. What is strange is that it was heading to Belgorod. The claim is it's heading to Belgorod, but Belgorod is much to the southwest. In other words, it's flying in the wrong direction. So it was, as mentioned, taking off from Belgorod. And then finally, Anton Gerashchenko says, as military correspondents say, that usually prisoners are not transported by aircraft to Russia. I mean, why would you take them in the most expensive mode of transport? These are POWs, you're at war, things are costly. You put them on a train, right? And that's what they're usually transferred by. They are transferred by trains or special vehicles. Russian Defense Ministry has not made any claims yet. Head of the Defense Committee of the Russian Duma claims that the Il-76 plane was shot down by Patriot or Iris-T missiles. Speaker of the Russian Parliament promptly ordered to prepare the address to US Congress and German Bundestag regarding the crash. Really? I mean, to add context, there's been no official statements in Russia regarding the crash of the A-50 aircraft over a week ago. It goes on to say that, the Ukrainians have said not to be careful about what is being claimed. So, my claims, for what it is worth, is that it is practically impossible for this plane to have been a Russian cargo plane carrying Ukrainian prisoners of war, because one, you don't usually transfer them in planes. Two, the plane was flying in the wrong direction. Three, the plane had just come from Iran. Four, the explosion was absolutely massive, and it at least was carrying munitions on board, almost certainly. And five, the Ukrainians surely would have known, had it been a POW carrying plane, what plane it was. Again, a bit of circumstantial evidence there. So I think we've got very strong probability here that the plane was indeed carrying munitions and not POWs. And the final piece of the jigsaw for me is that what's the evidence for the Russian claims? The evidence for the Russian claim is purely circumstantial. That is, that today there was due to be a prisoner swap. Now, the Russians have said, we're no longer we're pausing the prisoner swap. Claim was being that there was a second plane behind it, although that would have been heading in the wrong direction as well. That had to turn around because that was carrying prisoners, so they've paused it. It could likely be that second plane was carrying prisoners, maybe, or not likely. It's possible that was carrying prisoners, and they did turn it around because of the worries of it being shot down, and they could use that as an excuse for that first plane being full of prisoners as well, or something. I don't know. But for me, the probability is very much in favour of the Russians talking rubbish again, as mentioned yesterday with regard to the market attack in Donetsk. Anyway, hopefully that was of use. More information will come out as we proceed, but there's my little bit of disinformation debunking. Take care, speak soon.